Science, the show you're listening to right now. This is a little special thing that I was going to throw together later on in our hiatus, but unfortunately our music special is going to be a little late due to reasons, just some complications with getting stuff recorded and some personal stuff that's going on behind the scenes. So we're going to get that to you as soon as we can, but unfortunately it's not coming out when I was hoping to release it. But I'd had this little thing in the back of my head, even though it's a one-man show and I despise one-man podcasts. But, you know, a lot of listeners have mentioned that they enjoy our picks or our recommendations for video games, and I figured with, you know, gift cards and holiday money and all of that stuff, you know, some of you might be looking for some new stuff to play, some off the radar stuff, not necessarily the big games. And so I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about some games that I will probably not end up mentioning on the podcast proper, simply because, you know, when we're running short on time and things of that nature, I'm always the one who cuts what I'm going to talk about in the interest of our guests or Patrick or whoever else is on the show at the time. So there's stuff that just gets, you know, thrown by the wayside. And these are also games that are probably not going to get mentioned on our upcoming year in review as far as games that are going to make it into my top 5 for the year. Not because they're bad games by any means, just because I know that they're not going to crack. That list is pretty much locked in. We still have some time here, so I'm going to be playing some other games that may end up cracking that list, but these are not likely to do so. So yeah, just thought I would throw this together. Minimal editing. It's almost like a YouTube video for your ears. So be sure to click that like button and smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications, y'all. So you can hear more podcasts like this. I don't know. Yeah, so I guess without further ado, I'll just jump right into it. The first one I wanted to talk about, I mentioned briefly, well, not briefly, but I mentioned it on that little music special that I threw out earlier in the year, but that's really all that I've ever mentioned about it. I've never talked about it on the show, and it's been a while now since I played it, so this is probably the only time I'm ever going to talk about it. This is actually a little game that came out in 2015 that I completely missed. I don't even remember people talking about it at the time, but I know I had heard the name. It's called Oxenfree. And the reason I ended up picking this game up was because it gets mentioned quite often by Rob Pearson on the PlayStation Access Friday features, which I've mentioned before. You should definitely check out the Friday features from PlayStation Access on YouTube. They're phenomenal. I just adore hearing that man talk. And he loves Oxenfree for a lot of reasons, one of which is that it's a game that you can beat in one sitting. It's very short. It's like, I think like 4 hours, maybe 5 hours tops. I had no idea what to expect when I started playing it. I thought it was just going to be kind of a quirky little adventure style game, and it is, but what I wasn't prepared for was how freaking scary it is. It gets weird and creepy real fast, and I had started playing this game like around midnight, just on a blue, like on a Friday night or something like that, Friday or Saturday night, and was not prepared for what I was in store for, and ended up playing the whole thing that night. I think I finished like 4:30 in the morning or something like that. Because the narrative just totally sucked me in, but it was also just super creepy. Stayed with me for days, after I finished it. I actually, played through it again all the way through, like 2 days later, because it's definitely one of those games that is about, you get more out of it if you play it multiple times. I was satisfied with the ending that I got on the second playthrough, so I didn't go any further, but I definitely could have. But basically, you know, you're playing a girl who is going to this party on an island with some of her friends from school. There's not supposed to be anybody on this island during this party. They kind of bribed someone to let them take the ferry onto the island when they weren't supposed to be. And things happen that involve time loops and possible ghosts and other things. Like, it's not one that I really want to like go into like depth on, because the beauty of the game is in discovery. Just go in with as little info as possible. Just be aware that it is a adventure game with minimal mechanics. The main puzzle mechanic is that you have this radio, this little shortwave radio that you're tuning the dial to find out, to solve puzzles and also get information. And at certain points you can find different radio stations that are like being intercepted on the island that will give you music or like creepy audio clips or a glimpse into the history of this island that you're on. It's really cool. The dialogue is amazing. The voice acting is great. As far as tone, it reminds me of another small little game called Night in the Woods, which is another one that I didn't really talk about much last year that I really enjoyed. But if you're familiar with Night in the Woods at all, I definitely recommend playing Oxenfree if you enjoyed that at all. If not, if you're not into the adventure game, this might not do it for you, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. And like I said, it stuck with me. Like I still remember it vividly, and that's kind of a rarity for me with video games these days. Also a fantastic soundtrack, so worth it for that as well. Let's see. Next one. Okay, so this one, it's going to get a little heavy, and I apologize, but that's why I wanted to put it early in this list. I picked up Life is Strange 2, but as of this recording, only the first episode has been released, which is unfortunate. I wish I had more to say about it. If you listen to the show for a long time, you know that the Life is Strange games really hit me where I live. There's definitely people on that team that have dealt with family loss or sudden loss in a way that feels very immediate and real. And for someone who has experienced that, they become very emotional experiences. And I will say that Life is Strange 2 episode 1 is no exception. It's very shocking. But I think one of the things that really stood out for me is that it tells the story of two Mexican-American boys in the Pacific Northwest. And, you know, I don't know, I guess I don't know if I've talked about this on the show. I'm mixed race. I'm a whole bunch of stuff. But I've never connected with the Mexican, heritage that I have. It's always felt weird and uncomfortable to me, and I've never clicked with it. I don't really like the food. I don't really like the music. I don't like the language. And so I've always felt very alienated from that part of my family, even though that's predominantly what I am. I've always felt more, well, I've really felt more like a white dude, honestly, but like, even closer to like the black part of my family than the Mexican part of my family. So it was very eye-opening and very interesting to be in the shoes of this, you know, Mexican-American, teenage boy who is going through a really rough spot, very stressful, a very emotional time, and also trying to take care of his little brother. But then also just like dealing with, you know, systemic racism and just the way that people look at them. And, you know, that's one of the things that I've talked about that I love about video games is being able to step into the shoes of someone that you don't identify with and see the world through their eyes. And that's very much what this first episode of Life is Strange 2 was like. I mean, there's literally a part where I had an opportunity to steal from this convenience store at a time when we really needed food and supplies, but we still had money. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. And right now it's not absolutely necessary. But I still got accused of shoplifting by the very racist, shop owner who wasn't even in the shop when we were there, and ends up kidnapping the character and chaining him up in the back room and literally says the words, "It's because of people like you that we need this wall." And that's what this game is going for. And I think it comes by it honestly. And I'm really curious to see where it goes from there. First episode was pretty amazing, and I can't wait to see more. Obviously, probably won't end up talking about it again on the show until everything is said and dusted. But I did want to make sure that people are aware that it's out, because I don't know if it really got a lot of buzz at the time. And that it's good. I think with Life is Strange Before the Storm, myself and a lot of people weren't sure if it was going to be any good after that stellar first game. And and then also this sequel is shaping up to be just as good, just as affecting, and with very likable characters. So even if you're sad that there's no Max or Chloe in this sequel, I don't think it really matters because these new characters are just great. So don't sleep on it. If you enjoyed that first game at all, I highly recommend it and can't wait to see what comes up next. All right, and I apologize for getting a little heavy there, but I promise you that the next thing is like the polar opposite of heavy. It's a game that I picked up after playing through Hitman 2 and finishing up The Witcher 3, both very mature, very violent games, and I wanted something just light and fluffy and kind of like a palate cleanser almost. And I mentioned it briefly on the episode with Ryan Scott, but I picked up the Spyro Reignited trilogy. Really just because it looked so damn pretty, and I had fond memories of the first Spyro game, which I thought that I had finished, but I clearly didn't, because after I got, about 25% into the game, I did not recognize anything anymore, and I'm shocked because it's so damn easy. It is like baby's first platformer, so I don't know why I wouldn't have finished it back in the day. Cause that's also back in the time when I was finishing my games. I didn't really have much of a backlog. So I don't know what happened there back in the PS1 days for me to not have finished the first Spyro game. It's a really pretty game. It's real bright and colorful, and I love the character, and it's just fun to romp around that world. I don't think it's a good platformer. I know that's probably a little controversial to say, but I don't think Spyro handles very well. Especially when you're charging. The charge is terrible. And it's very easy to have something right in front of you that you need to charge at, and then have him go like just right past it. And that happened over and over for me. When he's gliding or flying, he doesn't bank well. His jump is very poor, and a lot of times I found myself missing jumps that I was supposed to be able to nail, but he just couldn't make it. And, for a game that is about making jumps, that's kind of terrible. Not to say that this isn't a good game or worth playing. It's very fun. It's very enjoyable. I just think that if you're comparing it to the Marios of the world, or the, Donkey Kongs of the world, or even the Crash Bandicoots of the world, even by that measure, I don't think that this game stands up. So if you're looking for like a really good platforming game, this isn't going to fit the bill. But if you just want like a fun little romp and, collect things and see those progress bars, go to 100%, this'll do you good. I think it's a good price for it, and it's fun to look at. I also don't think the soundtrack is very good at all. Very repetitive and just not entertaining compositions. But I enjoyed it. I got every trophy on the first Spyro game. I'm going to put it down for a little bit, play some other things, and then I'll probably do the same thing for Spyro 2, and then go away from it again, and then eventually complete all the Spyro 3. So it is a recommendation from me. Just take the advisement that it's far from a hardcore platform game like you would be led to believe from, or maybe even from memory. Like maybe you're thinking of it as being in the Mario echelon, and it is very much not that. The next little game is another platform game. This is one that I had been planning on skipping, but then there's just so much buzz about it around the Game Awards this year, and then I heard a lot of buzz from like the Giant Bomb folks about it possibly being one of the top games of the year. Spoiler alert, it didn't end up getting that high, but it's Celeste. Apparently they refer to it as a splatformer. It's in that Super Meat Boy vein, where it's about very precision platforming. You're going to die a lot and very quickly, but it's okay because you get reset to the beginning of that room immediately. So you don't have to worry about long load times or anything like that when you fail. It's a game that expects you to fail and expects you to figure out how to play the game through failure. And I'm all fine and good with that. But this game just did absolutely nothing for me. I understand why people like it. I can definitely see why people like it. It's just pressing all of the buttons that I don't want pressed. I'm really over the 16-bit aesthetic, unless you're doing something really unique and special with it. Cause I lived through it. Like I've played all those games, and while it was nice to see that come back in a time when after going through like the PS1 and PS2 era where it was almost all polygons and very little 2D art, it was nice to see that come back in the indie market, but I'm over it now. I really am. And when you have a sprite as small as Celeste, where there's really no detail in her sprite, so there's no real way for her to emote or anything like that, it just doesn't do anything for me. And, yeah, it's really, you feel accomplished when you get through a particularly tough section of platforming. But I find myself just saying, to what end? I played it for a couple hours, and it's not that I wasn't enjoying myself. It was just that I've seen it before. I've done it before. It didn't feel fresh or special. And it also was definitely not what I'm looking for at that point. Maybe I'll go back to it later. I know a lot of people are really high on the soundtrack also. And I think the soundtrack is just legit bad. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. I actively dislike the music in that game. And that was I know a big hooking point for a lot of people. They're oh, those songs and those remixes of the songs are so amazing. And it's chiptune. It's nothing that I haven't heard before, and I've heard better in far better games. Again, not saying that it's a bad game or, not worthy of the effusive praise that it's getting. It's just really not for me. I feel nothing for that game. So, sorry to burst Celeste fans' bubbles, but, I will stand alone in that like I do with Nier Automata and Valkyria Chronicles 4 and Grand Theft Auto 5. Just the lone person in the wind who dislikes a game that everybody else universally loves. It's fine. I'm getting used to it at this point. And that brings me to, this is going to be a really short show. I thought I was going to get at least half an hour out of this, but I am not. This is a real short little thing. I need somebody else to play off of. That's the thing. I need someone to comment, and, maybe I should have grabbed someone for this, but I did not. This is why single man podcasts just really are the worst. I'll do better next time. And trust me, the music special is going to be worth the wait. Last, but certainly not least, is a game that I picked up purely on the recommendation of John Brandon from the Square Roots podcast. He was talking about this game on a recent episode of their show. They're actually going through Dragon Quest V right now. So if you are behind on that, they're only on episode 4 right now. So I highly recommend listening to them go through their first Dragon Quest game on Square Roots. But, it's Monster Boy and the Cursed Kingdom, which, this is the same team who did that remake Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap last year. And the whole lineage of Wonder Boy and Monster Boy, and I think Alex Kidd is involved somehow, and I think Adventure Island is in there at some point. It's a very confusing lineage that there's a Retronauts all about it, and I listened to that episode and I was still confused. There's a bunch of games in this series that go by different names and are just very, very tangentially related to each other. It's a really weird series. But this is not a remake like Wonder Boy and the Dragon's Trap was. This is a brand new game from the same team, and it is amazing. I don't know if it's going to crack my top 5, but it could. I might be doubling up on this as far as talking about it, and if so, I apologize in advance. But it's one of those games that, I think I had 2 hours into it as of going into the weekend on Friday. And then by Saturday night, I had 10 hours into it. And I don't know where those other 8 hours came from. All I know is that I played that game a hell of a lot over the weekend. And, it's an action platformer, but it's an action platformer that requires precision like Celeste does. But it's not trying to do this bullshit retro thing with the graphics. It is just bloody gorgeous from head to toe. Big, well-animated sprites that look like they belong in a cartoon. Super detailed backgrounds, especially when you get to the town where it's got 3 or 4 levels of parallax with all of these different townspeople in the foreground and background. That you want to be able to interact with because they look so interesting and cool, but they're just set dressing basically. Beautiful particle effects and just neat things they do with water and lava, and everything about it is just top notch. And it's a game where you start off as just a kid with a sword and a shield, and then you get more equipment and you're going through these levels. It's sort of a exploration-based game a la Metroid or Castlevania, but less about, getting everything in the map. Like there's definitely you're picking up new equipment and gear, but a lot of that is more about like, oh, well, now you're going to take less damage from this type of attack, or you're going to do this type of elemental damage for this weapon. The important gear that you come across is very obvious, where you'll get to a spot where you can't progress anymore, and then you find this treasure chest with these boots that you need, that all of a sudden now you can traverse the area that you couldn't before. Those are very explicitly found, where all of the bonus stuff is definitely more about just trying to outfit your guy with as much cool gear as you can. But then on top of that, you end up getting cursed. Like first you get turned into a pig who has a very poor attack, but he can sniff out secrets and he can do a butt stomp. And then you turn into a snake who can get through small areas and can flip switches with his poison attack. And you just have all these different forms that you keep getting. And each one adds a completely new layer of mechanics onto the game. So by the time you get to the Frog Knight, who has this tongue that can allow him to swing from certain rings, like Simon could on Super Castlevania 4, or Samus could with the grappling hook on Super Metroid. You also have these special slingshot points, and they'll chain 5 or 6 of these together to where you have to really be on it in order to get from point A to point B. But it's super thrilling once you get there. Really opens up the game, and just each one of these forms just adds exponentially more depth to the gameplay. And so then you start to get into situations where just in order to get through this room, you're going to switch between 3 of these different forms just to do a very specific thing. And at the point of the game that I'm at now, you have to do that very quickly. It's jump up with the frog, swing to this platform, double jump, and then while you're in midair is transform into the snake who can cling to this ceiling and then get around this area, and then turn into the pig who has to use a bomb in order to break this block in order to solve a puzzle. It's that level of timing and precision, and it can get a little frustrating at times, but it's also very rewarding and, again, just beautiful to look at. Amazing soundtrack. I'm actually going to highlight one of the songs in the music special. So I really can't recommend it enough. It's a $40 game, which might seem like a bit much, when you first look at it. It's really well worth it. I'm about 60% through as far as completion goes of the map. I don't know how much I would have if I'm just mainlining, getting to the end of the game. But it's one of those games where I totally see myself trying to 100% it. And that'll probably take me a good 20-something hours, but just enjoying every bit of it. I'm probably gonna fire that up when I finish editing this bad boy. But that's gonna do it. I've played a lot of other stuff during the break, and I'll be playing quite a bit more, but those are bigger games like Soul Calibur 6 and Monster Hunter and things of that nature. So those will probably get talked about on the show proper when we're back from break. But these were some games that I just kind of wanted to take a moment to talk about in depth and let you guys know what I think about them. And maybe you have some recommendations for some smaller games that might, fill that, I was going to say the void between Christmas and the beginning of the year, but there is no void because, January we're getting Onimusha HD and Resident Evil 2. And then February is just packed. So there's not really a lot of time to try to play some of these smaller games, but some of these are really worth taking the time out to do so. If you enjoyed this, definitely let me know either on Twitter or at Pixelbit. Let me know if you picked any of these up, or if, I persuaded you in any way to try any of these. That's, one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, my retail days and how much I enjoy recommending games to people and them coming back to me and saying, that was a really great game and I had a lot of fun with it. And I'm glad that you told me about it because I would have totally missed out on it if you hadn't let me know about it. So if I do that for you at all with any of these games, definitely let me know. As always, I'm on Twitter at Julian_Titus. The show is on Twitter at NWPcast. You can always go to Pixelbit and comment there, or over at Facebook at facebook.com/nerdswithoutpantspodcast. I don't know exactly when that music special will be out, but it should be fairly soon. I'm trying to keep stuff coming on the normal days that our episodes would be out, even though we're on hiatus. I am pretty sure that we're going to record our first episode of the year on the 24th. So we've still got a couple weeks here, well, almost 3 weeks of break time to really get some other games under our belts and see what we have to say for our Game of the Year roundup. And that'll be the first thing that we record. And then, like I said, got new features coming out. We're going to be doing giveaways, all sorts of fun stuff coming in 2019 for y'all. As always, thanks for listening, and keep it pantsless, Internet. Goodbye.